This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Beginning today's show is Kansas Farm Service Agency Farm Loan Specialist Marissa Kepley reviewing farm loan changes at FSA and what producers should keep in mind to benefit loan assistance. Kansas Forest Service Northeast District Forester Blaine Stroble continues the show as he explains the Community Tree Inventory Program and what it provides to Kansas communities. Brad White and Bob Larson end the show with a discussion on how a Freemartin heifer could be born from sex semen on a recent Cattle Chat podcast from the Beef Cattle Institute. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show hearing from the Farm Service Agency. And today, we're joined by Kansas Farm Service Agency Farm Loan Specialist Marissa Kepley. Marissa, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
Marissa, wanting to begin with reminders about the Direct Loan Program from the Kansas Farm Service Agency.
Yeah, absolutely. So our FSA Direct Loan Program, just want to make your listeners aware of what we have to offer. So under that program, we have both farm ownership and operating loans. Those are for any producers that want to establish, maintain, or maybe strengthen their farming operation. And those loans are taken care of and processed by the local service centers that we have kind of spaced out around our state. We've got 21 offices for folks to go in and visit with. Those loans can be used for a variety of things. So on the operating side, they can be used to purchase livestock or equipment or anything like the day-to-day operations. So if you've got your fuel and your chemical bills, things like that folks need to get paid. Those loans are offered up to $400,000 with a 7-year repayment term. And then we've got farm ownership loans. So with those loans, we can have purchases of farmland or some sort of enlargement or improvement to an existing operation. And for those loans, we can go up to $600,000, and those are generally a maximum term of a 40-year repayment. So you might be wondering, okay, what kind of rates are you offering, or what are the financing options with those programs? So as of July 1st, our direct rates for farm ownership loans, we have kind of 3 different options under that category. There are 100% FSA financed loans. Those presently are at 5.875. We've got joint financing options where FSA and one of your local lenders, your bank or your credit union that you might be working with, we split the loan balance between the two of us. Those presently are at 3.875. And then we also have what we call down payment farm ownership loans. So those can be made to beginning farmers or socially disadvantaged farmers or veterans, where a 5% down payment comes from the applicant, and then FSA steps in and finances a portion as well as another lender. Those are currently at 1.875%. Our direct operating loans, those are at an even 5%. And then we also have some emergency loans. What those would be are to help operations recover from any sort of natural disaster that might have caused physical or production losses to the operation. So far here in Kansas this fiscal year under the direct program, we've had some really good activity. We've approved over 1,160 loans and put more than $208 million into the Kansas ag operation, helping those farmers and ranchers.
Have there been any changes within these programs?
Yeah, last fall we did have a few changes that were implemented. Those were part of what was called the Enhancing Program Access and Delivery for Farm Loans rule. What that rule did, or those changes, they were kind of designed to give increased financial flexibilities to the ag producers, and overall the goal for those producers to find ways to grow their operation and improve profitability and savings for their operation. So just to highlight a couple of the updates that happened within that new rule, we have low interest installment set-aside program now that we can offer. So if a existing borrower is financially distressed, we can look at kind of pushing back one of their annual loan payments at a reduced rate to give them some breathing room in their operation. We've got some new repayment options to give borrowers some flexibility to build some capital reserves or savings and try to make those longer-term financial planning decisions. And then we've also kind of lowered our additional collateral requirements for our direct farm loans. So that just makes it easier for those borrowers, to open up the availability of their assets, to not put so many at risk when they apply for a loan or when they receive a loan. Ultimately, like I said, those rules, they were put in place to kind of give some financial freedom to borrowers and overall help them build long-term financial stability.
Why should someone in agriculture maybe consider choosing to do a loan through the Farm Service Agency?
We can look at, how can they benefit from our assistance. So it's, FSA loans are not just for established operations. We can provide some financial assistance to beginning farmers or even smaller sized operations, as well as those that are experiencing some financial difficulty. So a beginning farmer is going to be somebody that has operated for less than 10 years. And then they don't own farm acreage that exceeds the 30% average of the county within their headquarter unit or where they're located. The smaller sized operations that we're looking at, we do have what are called microloans. So those loans, they're particularly helpful to those smaller to mid-sized operations. Again, they can work the same way as our regular loans, help with operating costs, feed, fertilizer, go to purchase machinery and equipment or tools, livestock, smaller requests like that. They are up to $50,000, and they're just made to more expedite those smaller requests more quickly. And then those operations that might be struggling a little bit financially, we can also offer options to refinance, maybe carryover debt, just to put the operation in a better place to move forward, on a sound financial footing for the next year.
What are some benefits then for people who are maybe wanting to use or are using some farm loan assistance?
Some things that, applicants just coming into the program may want to consider or look at. One of our eligibility requirements is a satisfactory credit history. So, when we receive a loan request, we're gonna pull a credit report, verify, what debts do you have out there, how are those going to work into your new loan request, just to make sure that we're trying to make a really good financial decision for the operation and help them out. A couple of proactive steps that applicants can take with regard to their credit history are just making sure your bills are paid on time. When you're able to pay down existing debts and keep those credit card balances low, and then avoid suddenly opening or closing a lot of credit accounts that might pop up on that credit report. If we've got a borrower that is already a part of the FSA farm loan family, just something that, we advise those borrowers to identify financial goals that they have. We work with them to kind of evaluate how they're progressing to meet those goals. And then just really the biggest thing we encourage our borrowers to have is just an open line of communication with their farm loan staff. So things that a borrower may consider or need to keep in mind when they need to be communicating with FSA if you're having significant changes in your operation. So number of acres that you're farming or livestock numbers are changing within your operation. If you have significant changes to your family income or expenses, so, loss of employment or unexpected medical bills, or if you have a major weather event that comes through that destroys crops or equipment or some sort of illness that affect the livestock. Just some examples of things to keep in mind. And if a farm loan borrower that we have on the books is unable to make their payments to potentially, suppliers or other creditors or FSA on time. Again, we just encourage that open line of communication, make contact early with our staff so we can discuss any servicing options that you might have available.
So if a producer is maybe needing a little bit of financial assistance, worthwhile just reaching out to the Farm Service Agency and seeing if there's anything that you guys could help with?
Absolutely, yes. Reaching out to one of those 21 farm loan sites across the state, just making that contact, having that open conversation and communication early in the process. All of our employees can discuss options and requirements of any of our loan programs that we have. If the option to stop by or call, just doesn't fit into their schedule, interested parties, they can go online. They can go to www.farmers.gov. That website has a lot of useful information, not only about farm loans, but also about any programs that FSA offers.
Marissa, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Shelby. Appreciate it.
That was Kansas Farm Service Agency Farm Loan Specialist Marissa Kepley. As she mentioned in today's show, you can find more information about these programs and other programs from the Farm Service Agency by going online to Farmers.gov. Again, that is Farmers.gov. If you would like to talk with someone in person, you can find your local service center by going online to that Farmers.gov and by going to the upper right-hand corner and selecting Service Centers. I will link all this information in today's show notes on agtoday.net. I would like to also take the time to remind you about the upcoming AI in Kansas Agriculture event, which is taking place July 22nd from 1 to 8 p.m. in Linden, Kansas. There will be guest speakers talking about cutting-edge technology and also be a networking dinner and demonstrations. I will also link more information about this in today's show notes, or you can find information for yourself by going to agmanager.info. Once again, that is agmanager.info. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Kansas Forest Service's Blaine Stroble to talk about community tree inventories. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about community tree inventories with Kansas Forest Service Northeast District Forester Blaine Stroble. Blaine, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Blaine, what is a community tree inventory?
Yeah, so a community tree inventory is something that we do where essentially we go out to a community and count all trees on public property. So it starts with kind of a meeting with the city, whether it be the right-of-way specialist or the parks department. Whoever's in charge of the trees is who we'll go talk to first, and that'll kind of line us out for what they want. Basically, what we're doing is we're collecting data on the community's trees so that we can turn it back into the community and they have a better understanding of what they have, because in order to manage something, you really need to know what you have before you can actually manage it properly. So we'll meet with them and figure out what they are wanting from this inventory. Typically, it involves collecting all trees within 15 feet of the curb line, which is what we classify as right-of-way trees. So standard would be from the curb to the sidewalk. If there's no sidewalk involved, then we'll do 15 feet. And then all parks, sometimes some cemeteries, pretty much anything that's publicly managed. A lot of courthouses, city halls, different areas like that. Now, that's just kind of the baseline standard. We've had some communities that have wanted to include all trees in front yards, which is quite more involved. And there's some positives and some negatives to that. But typically that standard inventory is just collecting data on everything that's in the community.
And you mentioned measuring the trees, but what other information do you gather from that time you spend by the tree?
When we walk up to every tree, we're collecting all this data via GPS. And so we'll walk up to this tree with our phones or tablets, and we'll collect the species, the size of it, which we measure in DBH, which is the diameter at breast height, the overall condition, either dead, poor, fair, or good, the land use, so whether it's on a residential property, in a park, in a cemetery, and then the amount of light that tree is getting. So the reason we collect the light one is because the program that we use will automatically pull ecological benefits from each tree, but they have to know those categories in order to properly assess the benefit of the tree. So if it's only getting light on 3 sides, we input that. If it's in a wide open space and it gets full light, then it's going to provide more benefit than some of the other trees that may be shaded. So that's why we collect those data sets. And then with that, like I said, our program will actually run a full analysis of all of the trees in the community and give a full ecological breakdown of the benefit that those trees have.
Why is there value in knowing what species are in a community?
So there's a couple reasons. A perfect example is just to be able to prepare. We're constantly promoting diversity, trying to get different trees planted, trying to get, new species out there. And a big reason why we do that is so that when we have pests that come through, Dutch elm disease was a great example that came through and wiped out pretty much all the American elms. We want to be able to give this information of what the community has to the community so that they can better prepare for that. Something that's current would be the emerald ash borer, which is kind of moving from the eastern part of the state towards the west. And we've used some inventory data with the city of Abilene so that they can better prepare. Emerald ash borer has not made it to Abilene yet, but we've given them the inventory data and highlighted the ash trees so that they can start preparing for that. In a lot of these smaller communities, being able to see where everything is and know the condition of it and know how they can start prioritizing removals is super beneficial. They can actually go through and highlight just their ash trees, print off a list, and then just begin working on that list, trying to remove trees. That way they can be ahead of the game. But the reason why we want to know what's there is so we can provide guidance on what they should plant more of, what they should avoid planting more of, and then maybe kind of give them some suggestions as to where they can plant more and what they should plant in those areas.
What does this entire process look like?
So, like I said, we'll start the inventory with meeting with a city official or whoever our contact is for that community. It may be a tree board member, it may be a city council member, whoever takes responsibility for those trees. And we'll kind of get a guideline for that inventory, what we need to include, what we don't need to include. And then from there, we really just get out and start putting boots on the ground. We'll walk up to, like I said, every tree. Well, I guess I should say we first break the city into kind of a grid pattern. Typically, most of our smaller rural communities are just a very standard grid with north-south roads and east-west roads. And so typically we'll just pick a corner of town and go park on the northwest corner and start walking south until we get to the south end of town, then bump over a street, and then we'll work that street all the way back up north. And we'll do that just throughout all of town. So it's quite a bit of time that goes into it, but I think the data collection that we get from it is really beneficial. For example, I think we just looked at the city of McPherson. That is, they're scheduled to get an inventory done this summer, and I think we estimated the amount of time to be around 260 man-hours to get the entire community inventoried. So it takes time. It does take time, and typically we try to go out with our tech team, our forestry technician team, and it kind of helps to have a little bit bigger group. Areas go a little bit quicker. There's the ability to ask questions, get some second opinions on some of these oddball species that we may run into. But yeah, we'll just get out, count trees, and then once that inventory process is actually completed, then we'll give the city a kind of a data analysis page. And basically what that is a 2 to 3 page document that just shows what our findings were. What was the overall condition of the trees in town? What were the prominent species in town? Just kind of things that we noticed from our data. And a lot of times we'll present that to the tree board or the city council, whoever those major players are. And from there, if they're showing interest, that's when we can dive into something deeper, such as a full-scale management plan. That full-fledged management plan, it can be anywhere from 25 to 35 pages of actual guidance and material for how that community can better manage their trees over the next 3 to 5 years. It can be very beneficial, but we try to tailor those management plans towards the community, and with that, we have to know their resources. And so it's kind of a process that we'll work with the community on. That way we know what they can and can't accomplish, and then, again, provide them with that kind of guideline for the next couple of years.
How many trees have the Kansas Forest Service looked at?
So we began this inventory process. We're doing it through a grant right now in conjunction with a couple other states. And the state of Kansas, we are supposed to get 30 inventories done between 2024 and 2025. I think we did 8 last year, leaving us with 22 to do this year. I think in total, we've done right at about 18 or 20 between last year and this year, coming up with a total of about 54,000 trees and counting. We actually have people out in the field right now as we speak, continuing to count trees. So, and we've seen it all. I mean, we've seen hundreds of different species, any size you can imagine. Some of the largest trees in the state, we've been able to come across and find. So it's been a really cool process, and it's been a really cool just experience overall to see how the diversity and communities vary from all different regions of the state. We've collected inventories clear out west towards Colorado, and we've done some right on the Kansas-Missouri border, and now we're doing some down south of Wichita. So it's really kind of cool to see how we can take this inventory data and see the diversity throughout the state as a whole.
If someone listening right now thinks this might be something their community is interested in, what should they do?
So they can jump on our website, kansasforests.org. And there's a little tab where you can find a community forester. And you'd want to click on that tab, and then that'll give you a map of the state where you can click on a county, the county you reside, and that will give you the contact information for your district forester. Click on that, send us an email. Anybody is welcome to reach out. We're always looking for more communities that are interested in this information. Like I said, we're doing it for the community. And so we love having people reach out saying that they want this information. They want us to come do an inventory for them because they're actively taking part in better managing their trees. And so anytime we have somebody that's really showing a high interest that really wants to make a difference, we're happy to listen. We're happy to help however we can.
Blaine, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure as always.
That was Kansas Forest Service Northeast District Forester Blaine Stroble. I will link the resource that he mentioned in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. I'm Madeline Drake, in for Shelby Varner. And we continue our show with K-State's Brad White and Bob Larson on the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast.
Next question that we got from a listener, and Bob, I'll set this up for you. They used sexed semen, but they ended up with a Freemartin. So I'd like you to kind of describe to us first, what is a Freemartin?
Yeah. So a Freemartin is a female calf born twin to a bull calf. And just the way the placenta works in cattle, this is different than in humans, different even than in small ruminants like sheep and goats. But so there's some hormones from the beef calf, the bull calf, that crosses the placenta and affects the female tract so that her tract doesn't develop normally. So it's kind of halfway between a male and a female reproductive tract. So that's what we call a Freemartin, and they're sterile. They can't get pregnant.
Does that happen every time you have a male and female?
Almost every time. It's actually quite rare that it doesn't. It would have to be just the timing that you get some blood transfer would make it not happen. So I don't know what the percentage would be, but probably more than 90% of the time, I would expect to get a Freemartin heifer if it's a heifer co-twin with a bull. Okay, so almost all the time. Now, this is an interesting situation because they used sex semen and they expected only heifers. And this calf was born as a singleton. So there's a couple of possibilities. One is, the most probable is there was a bull calf in there. This was a twin pregnancy, and then the cow resorbed the bull calf somewhere during pregnancy, but after the time when it had caused the female to become a Freemartin. And in a sexed semen situation, that can happen. In biology, very few things, I would say none, are 100%. So when we sort semen into X female straws and Y male straws, we're about 90% accurate, give or take some. Sometimes it's a little bit better, sometimes it's a little bit worse. So if I bred 100 heifers to sexed semen, or if I got 100 pregnancies, 10 of those would be the opposite sex of what I selected. And so it is very possible to have an opposite sex in a sex-sorted semen situation. Now, the other possibility that could be going on here, because obviously this could happen. You could have twins. One of them is a male, even though the semen was sex-sorted, and that male was resorbed before birth. Those are all relatively unlikely things. So it could be a stack of unlikely things. The other thing is there's other birth defects that can affect the reproductive tract. There's hermaphrodites and pseudohermaphrodites. And visually, as the calf comes out, I'm not sure that I would tell the difference. So this may have truly been a Freemartin, or it may have been one of these pseudohermaphrodites that...
which functionally is the same.
Functionally, yeah. And you just put them in the same category. So there may never have been a bull calf in there, and this is another birth defect. So any of those are possible. So I think the real take-home is, no, our sex sorting process isn't 100%. And these intersex birth defects aren't common, but they happen. And we see them.
And so there's nothing really that you would do different next time to avoid that.
No, there's nothing to do differently.
And for the Freemartin, is there anything I can do management-wise if I really want to keep her? Is there any chance that she'll breed in the...
Almost zero. Again, there's very, very few things in biology that are 100%, but this is close. It's almost 100%.
And how do I know if she's a Freemartin?
Okay, usually there's some clues externally. The distance between the anus and the vulva is either and usually longer than typical. And so she just doesn't look quite right. A lot of times.
And longer enough to be easily noticeable.
Yeah, right. This doesn't look right. Yeah, this doesn't look right. And that would be a good clue. The depth of the vaginal vault is different. It's shorter. And those. So a veterinarian would be able to look at it and say, this is a Freemartin or something similar, and the fertility is going to be very low.
And as they get older, this would be a good reason to have them track scored or checked.
You will,
because you can identify some at that stage. Exactly. They don't look abnormal.
And some of them don't look very abnormal. You'd have to really look closely, but you will detect it on a reproductive tract score.
Once again, that was part of the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast with Bob Larson and Brad White. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.